big sky, big potential. In association with Mills and Reeve, this is Eastern Promise. Achieving more together. This is the podcast that bangs the drum for the East of England with a foot-tapping tempo that showcases our strengths and gets you vibing with the very best our region has to offer. Welcome to Eastern Promise. I'm Mike Rigby, and this week you join me on Cambridge Science Park, paying a visit to this region's foremost collective of professional problem solvers, Cambridge Consultants. Join me as I, along with Global Head of Biotechnology Francis Metcalfe and Richard Traherne of Capgemini's Next Frontiers Global Leadership Team, dig into the work that Cambridge Consultants does for clients across the globe. So let's find out more about a unique research and development presence in the East of England, Cambridge Consultants, on this week's Eastern Promise. Cast your minds back to the first Cambridge Tech Week, way back in 2023. Look, I've got to get my money's worth out of these sound effects, you know. Cambridge Consultants Executive Vice President Tim Ensor is standing on a table in the Bradfield Centre and corralling attendees into tour groups. One of those attendees was yours truly, and I remember not really knowing what to expect. And oh my goodness me, mind blown. That day, I saw advances in AI, drone technology, telecoms, and more. And 2 years on, at a press day at CC headquarters, I saw new advances developed for clients in sectors as varied as theme parks, pet care, robotics, and, much like this podcast's host, advanced drone technology. Oi, that's me you're talking about. Cambridge Consultants are, exactly as the name suggests, consulting scientists and engineers. When companies, and indeed governments around the world, face challenges that require an ingenious solution, that's where Cambridge Consultants comes in. I asked CC's Head of Biotechnology, Francis Metcalfe, and member of the distinctly Trekkie-sounding Next Frontiers Global Leadership Team, Richard Traherne, to find out more.
This is the end of a really fascinating day at Cambridge Consultants on Cambridge Science Park. Wow. I've always said that if they privatised Q Branch from the James Bond movies, you'd have the essence of Cambridge Consultants. But do you know what? I think today's probably changed my opinion on that a bit because it's far wider than that. And I'm here with, and I'd like you to introduce yourself so I don't do you a disservice, but to my left I have
Francis Metcalfe, Head of Biotechnology at Cambridge Consultants.
And Richard Traherne, Head of Next Frontiers, looking at those new technology and innovation areas.
Wow. And I'm slightly panicking now about how I'm going to do any of those things justice, because what really fascinates me, and I'll ask you both to reflect on this if you don't mind, is just the depths that you guys go to in terms of not just serving the clients that you have who come to you with a particular problem to solve, but how that when you also sort of make yourselves ready for the challenges yet to come. I wrote down, in fact, how do you benchmark so you're ahead of the benchmark? I'm not sure how that's even possible, but Francis, what do you make of that word salad?
I think that's exactly right, that we do like to be ahead of the curve. And I think one of the ways in which we do that is we We're always keen to hire really talented, forward-thinking staff who relish the idea of working closely together across disciplines, and who themselves are looking out in the world and seeing where the sort of frontiers of evolving technology are. And they're really keen to work with them and can come up with really creative ideas of what those converging technologies that we've talked about today, sort of AI, computing power, and engineering biology, what's possible, what that might make possible. And that's what makes it a very exciting place to work, but it also enables us to think ahead of the curve and help our clients, serve our clients by telling them what they might expect to be coming along.
So Richard, move fast and make things. Is that a kind of another quite a good nutshell description of?
Absolutely, and I think you're right to highlight the speed. What I'd add to Francis's reply is that we also have to invest ahead of the curve. So it is a matter of trying to find those areas, invest, experiment. Some of those fail, some of those pivot. Some of them change in nature, but we're always investing ahead. And also to pick up on what Francis talked about around the multidisciplinary aspects, because that's absolutely critical in modern day technologies where we are seeing the physical, digital, and in this case the biological worlds colliding together. And it requires a special type of person, the so-called T-shaped people that can sit across those areas and identify breakthroughs and create something that's really novel.
So one of the things that I particularly get excited about doing this is where I can sort of see from my really privileged position that there's lots of areas of the east of England that are both looking globally, but expertise kind of crosses over. And I think what you were sort of talking about today was a really fascinating example where there's lots of work going on in the east of England. I just could thinking of mental list of people who really should come and see what you do here. But perhaps I'll ask Richard to go first. Perhaps just talk us through, because obviously most of the listeners won't have been there today. So talk us through what you were talking about, if you can sort of do that in that'd be very unfair, but just a quick summation of what you both talked about, and I'll ask Francis to sort of cover off as well.
So I think it starts with the need and how biology is going to be a next method of innovating. It really is a new industrial revolution. We're using physical technologies, digital technologies, biological systems are next. They target a range of societal imperatives from healthcare, new precision medicines that can act on specific genetic profiles within the body. They act in agriculture to allow us to create crops in a very precise and deterministic way that solve pest problems, allow us to grow crops in places they don't grow before, and those type of things. All the way through to consumer goods and taking petrochemical derived ingredients out of personal care products or household products or plastics or packaging. And the realization, I think, of the industry is that those are things that we can't do with traditional technologies. Frankly, we're losing the race on our sustainability imperatives. Our current methods aren't enough. So biological systems are needed, and I'll let Francis perhaps talk about how we're doing that. But that's really the imperative.
Francis.
So one of the ways in which we're doing that is by actually bringing those teams together and working in our labs and trying to understand for ourselves first, so that we can help our clients understand how the power, for example, of AI to and particularly sort of large language models. People will be familiar with things like ChatGPT, which is a large language model. The power they have to help us understand biology better and recommend how we can make those improvements to enable to make some of the sort of biological solutions that people are already looking for actually be more tractable, be more commercially attractive, more commercially viable, so that we can actually bring those solutions into being. So for example, we've been doing work on proteins in our lab. People will be familiar with protein as something that occurs occurs in their food that is made by biology, it makes us, but also can be the basis of making some of these new materials so that we can make them out of things we grow or waste streams that are produced by industrial processes we have today that are perhaps contributing to some of the climate challenges we've got, how we can actually use those to make some of these materials so that without having to dig things out of the ground, frankly. So we've looked at how we can bring those experts together in the lab, look at how we can automate, use AI, but also engineering biology techniques together, and can we speed up and make it more predictable, how we can find those solutions, make that happen faster, make it more commercially attractive to our clients, but also actually get those solutions in the real world.
I think that's a really important point you've hit upon there, because I think on the tour that you took us on, it was called realisation. But obviously your client's going to have a specific end goal that they want you to reach. This isn't just an investigation for investigation's sake. I'm not saying that you wouldn't do that. I'm just saying you have a very specific end goal to deliver a product to a client. And I'm just wondering whether that's a key difference, not for better or for worse, but a key difference between Cambridge consultants and a university. Say, it's your pure research. You have a very specific commercial end goal in mind, but that might actually be quite a good thing because that propels you towards that end goal faster.
I think that's right. I think we almost are launched in some ways from what is done in university research, and as you say, we look to see where that's poised to transition to be put to real practical use and how we can make that so, but exactly as you say, to answer real questions out there in the world, how can we actually solve some of these societal challenges that Richard touched upon there, and actually do that for clients, make it so. Do
you want to follow up on that? You look poised to say something.
Well, only that I completely agree, and I think as a business we help clients to navigate complex new technologies. They're the sorts of projects or product developments that boardrooms mull over for potentially months or even years, deciding whether and how and how they want to do it and what the risk profile is going to be. So we're the organisation that helps them dissect that, comprehend the new area, the new technology, what's possible, what's feasible, what's cost effective, and our complete being is about helping that client to reach that commercial goal in a commercially viable way. That's really in our DNA.
That's really impressive. The number of things that I didn't realise that Cambridge consultants were part of. Somebody told me the other day about this is where the round tea bag was born. And I nearly fell over with the shock. I was like, oh my goodness me, it's the number of things that was saying. I wrote down 3 points, and perhaps I'll just ask you to reflect on these. I'm just trying to sort of get for the listener into the sort of the heart of what you do, why you do it, the power of why and what if you like. And those were insight, objectivity, and collaboration. So I want you to reflect on those points for me, if you would, because they seem to me, from what I've sort of read and heard today, they kind of go into the heart of what you do and why you do it in the corporate sense.
Yes, so I think what we're helping to bring in those conversations that Richard just talked about is insight about the technologies that we work with, coupled with what we're seeing, in our clients' markets, and to bring that insight both from a commercial perspective and a business perspective, but also from the perspective of actually doing this stuff within our own labs. And I think that's one of the things that sets us apart. I think you mentioned objectivity there. That's really important. You know, we want our clients to be able to trust us for our objective opinion, and because we're independent, you know, we don't have products of our own, and we're at that bleeding edge, if you like, of technology and involved closely in our markets, have that commercial perspective. We're able to give that sort of objectivity that's really important and is at the heart of good advice. And then collaboration. That's a really good word. It's important that you've brought that up. I mean, one of the things in this area especially, but not just in this area, you know, people that we work with are recognising more and more that, you know, no one organisation can do these things on their own. They do need to partner to be able to bring these things to fruition, and I would argue that's also within our DNA. It's how we work.
So how do you choose, Richard, those organisations that I'm not meaning clients necessarily, I'm talking about those organisations you turn to for collaboration? Is there any particular methodology that you have for selecting those, or is it just we want the best and we're going to go out and try and get the best?
Yeah, I'd say they fall in two categories perhaps. One is, the first category is the category of partners who are, you know, relatively consistent partners over time that provide us with some kind of platform. You know, we have public partnerships with people like NVIDIA or Microsoft, and they would be stable partners helping us to serve multiple clients. And in those, we're looking for state-of-the-art industry leadership and so on. The second category actually comes back to your point about objectivity, because, you know, as Francis was saying, you know, we're independent. We're not a product company that tries to sell a particular solution or a particular approach. We're technology agnostic for our client. You know, the best solution for our client is the solution that we propose. And so, in that second category of partner, that they will depend upon the particular project, and we'll go out and we'll find and measure and quantify the right partner to solve a particular client problem, and those will vary over time by definition.
So how do you judge the impact that Cambridge Consultants has beyond, I mean, because obviously a lot of the things that you develop are going to be brought to market under a badge not your own. And that's the gig, that's what you sign up for. So how do you judge that impact?
Well, ultimately, I think all the people who work here are driven by a similar goal, which is to, you know, actually see the solutions they're creating out in the world, not just creating good business for our clients, but actually being out there making that impact in the world, that the promise that we've talked about today. So, you know, we talked about some of the, you know, the societal imperatives for what we're doing. You know, sustainability is a really key challenge at the moment, and it drives all of us here. So I think, you know, our impact actually we measure by real differences that we're able to see that we're making in the world, beyond the businesses that we're helping to create and grow with our work.
What I liked about the presentation as well earlier was the interrogation around helping a client understand their need. What do you actually want? Is that what you really want? I mean, I want to come on to policy, by the way, because that's kind of my background. But Richard, perhaps you could just talk to how, as far as you can, the processes by which you help a client understand what they're looking for and how you can deliver that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because if a client reaches out to us for a project, or, you know, example, by definition, they lack something that's, you know, part of the intended solution. So, you know, by definition, the answer comes from us working together. So that's back to your collaborative point. And we generally co-create the answer. And you know, I would say that the magic comes from bringing an external influence, because many organisations develop incrementally, even in the most radical parts of the organisation, develop incrementally based on what they know and the people that they have and have worked with them over many years. We try to provoke that with an external view. So in biology, for example, we've used techniques from medical ultrasound imaging, where we have very limited amounts of data, to inform the approaches that we use for the AI that designs new proteins. Or we've used signal processing techniques from mobile phone technology that we develop elsewhere in that area. We've used computational fluid dynamics, that sort of physical modelling techniques from motor racing that we apply to scaling up small amounts of biology in a lab to bioreactors, which are the big manufacturing facilities. So, we try to inject in that external outside-in view, and that, I would say, is one of the highest values that clients take from us. But we could not do that alone. The best projects and the most value that we provide is when we have a really strong symbiotic relationship with our clients, and we co-develop that thing using the clients' market knowledge, their experience in what they're doing, with our external influence.
I suppose sorry, I forgot momentarily what I was going to ask. I was getting so excited about reading out all the things I'd written down. But the question I wanted to ask Francis before I come on to policy at last is, it feels like, in a weird way, failure isn't a thing here. Yes, things might not work, but everything that now works, there was a period when it didn't work, but it's the fact that, yes, this didn't work, but there's always going to be another application for it somewhere. That it might help, might not be working for us, but then somebody else might come along and say, oh, yeah, we could use that on this. So is that accurate? Is that an accurate way of sort of summarising the Cambridge consultancy ethos?
I think it's an interesting way of putting it. I guess I'm bound to say that, we in some ways, things not working is all part and parcel of innovating. You have to experiment to see what works, but equally what doesn't work. And that's part of making progress. And that's certainly one thing that we're used to doing here, but also we're used to managing that on behalf of our clients, because that can sometimes come across as a bit alarming. But we're very used to that process of how to manage that process of reducing risk or addressing technical risk. I think it's important to say, so that along that journey. So we're very used to how to do that. And yes, we foster a culture of how to manage that, but also to not make that afraid to try things, to try new things.
I think some of the best leaders in sort of the history of business have been those who've wanted to learn and adapt rather than just find, people to hold accountable and scream at them. But policy. Now, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, before I say that, do you want to just speak to the points around policy you were making earlier? Because I found that, as someone who sort of had a bit of a foot in that world, and found that endlessly fascinating, the things you were talking about.
Okay. Yes, policy and regulation and standards and things like that are really important for a new innovation, because without them, you can't release something to market. And because it's a new area, you want those things to form quickly. And traditionally, they don't. Traditionally, they're slow processes and they evolve over time. And so that's one problem that we see. The other problem is that often policy is influenced by people that don't have the greatest insight into the
You're making me smile now.
It may be that a policy is being put in place or designed to suit somebody's agenda, in a particular position within public sector. And so the governments around the world have things like policy lab constructs to help design and develop policy. We have some very specific tools that we use in the policy lab domain that design policy that not only meets the full set of stakeholders, so if we're talking to a farming community, and make new policy and forget a particular constituent and have that constituent up in arms with the results, that totally blocks the policy. It makes it totally useless. The huge amount of money that's gone into developing and releasing it and launching it is wasted. So our processes do two things. They inject in domain knowledge so that these are, in a sense, expert policies. And we also do very, very strong stakeholder analysis to ensure that this meets the public sector need, but also the needs of the different stakeholders that need to use it, adopt it, follow it, or whatever.
So establish your credentials and know your audience, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because obviously you're right, because with the greatest of respect to the civil servant, the senior levels are obviously all generalists. This has been a problem since the year dot, that they're all generalists. Speaking as a generalist, there's nothing necessarily wrong with being a generalist, but it's to know when you don't know. I think that's one of the things as well, the bravery to be able to say, I don't know. And there's not many politicians like or feel able to say, I don't know. And you're right to say there are certain opinions that form within the body politic that once solidified are very hard to shift. But as scientists and engineers and researchers, you know that a lot, the science and the engineering, physics, don't care about your personal preconceived. They will do what they're going to do. They will obey the laws of nature. So I suppose the challenge for all of us, but for scientists and engineers like yourself, is to put that in a way that can be absorbed by sort of the policymaker who has to go and select. I mean, select committees. Do you, for example, sort of engage with select committees? Because we had the EFRA committee in Norwich at the research park last week.
Yeah, well, we are touching on that and beginning to get more involved. And for us, that's about getting multi-stakeholder. It's about people in public sector, but also academia, industry, and so on, so that you have the multiple voices. And I'd say in the UK actually that the UK government at the moment is in a very strong position with its Department of Science, Innovation, Technology, DSIT, where they have a strong team. I also mentioned earlier today Lord Willits, David Willits, who he has spent time to really understand the issues, and I would say he is a real trailblazer in designing regulation quickly that is effective. And so his new innovation office is something that we're very supportive of. And we'd love to see that same level of energy and speed elsewhere in policy as well.
And as well as that, I think you have a strong position in that you don't sit. I mean, you kind of sit in this sui generis bracket of your very own. You're not of sort of the university sector, although obviously you take a lot of your personnel from there. You're not. I suppose you are private sector, but you just feel like you're in this unique location that's very easy for, I think, politicians except on those on the very fringes, to sort of to listen to what you have to say, because you're not the usual suspects. You are very much your own brand. Does that sound fair, Francis?
Yes, yes, it does. I've never articulated that way, but it does sound very, very fair. And I think we've talked a lot about commercial clients, but Richard has talked about the contacts that we've had and understanding we have of government, and we see that that's a really important part of the collaboration that we participate in. We take policy and regulation and ethics very seriously, and it's important that we can share our understanding, our expertise to help form that, but also that government can call on our independent perspective, again, as people who are actually doing this stuff, not just talking about it.
And just building on that, I think one other point is that a lot of clients and also governments use us as a barometer. By definition, we're an organisation that clients come to us to discover the next, to do the next. So both clients, but also governments, we're employed by certain governments around the world to look ahead at where technology is going as a barometer, which I think plays into the question, the point that you were making.
Yeah, absolutely, and the crystal ball point as well. So I was just going to briefly, before we wrap up, because it's a very, very busy afternoon, reflect on your point, Francis, that you just made around sort of ethics and values and such, and just to say what a Cambridge perspective that is, and I say that as a compliment, as a reflection of the place that I've sort of come to know over the past 3.5 years of doing Eastern Promise. That seems to be a very much of the place.
Yes, I think that's true. And it's not just paying lip service to it. We see it as an essential part and parcel of getting some of these things out into the real world, the things that we're all motivated by. It's necessary for all of us that we have those things in place.
Well, I feel like I've only been able to scratch the surface of Cambridge Consultants today. It's been so sort of head-spinning, but magnificent that you guys are working on some of the biggest problems, the wicked problems of our age. It's fantastic to have you there. It's always great to be here. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
My huge thanks to Richard and Francis for that brief glimpse behind the curtain at Cambridge Consultants and their indulgence in the face of metaphor overload. And that there is all there is for episode 148 of the Eastern Promise podcast. I have been Mike Rigby, and I will be so again next week when I'll be hitting the streets of North Walsham to find out how Norfolk County Council is making sure that high streets matter. I'll be discovering what this package of initiatives is doing to aid hard-pressed businesses and keep our town centre thoroughfares vibrant. That's all to come in but 7 days. Until then, bye for now. To hear other episodes of the Eastern Promise podcast and to find out more about what we do, go to our website at easternpromise.org.uk. Eastern Promise is a Pudding Shed production in proud association with Mills & Reeve. Achieving more together.